Today, my guest is Solenne Derussy. She is a cybersecurity VC investor at Auriga Cyber Ventures. And cybersecurity is a space that I haven't really explored much. So I'm very excited about this episode, about learning about it, about your perspective, Solenne. So welcome.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. I always like to start my episodes with a bit of a background, personal question, because I feel like everybody has such an interesting story, how they started their startup, how they went into VC. And what caught my eye when I was doing my bit of research that your background, you studied law in your undergrad. And then obviously, we can argue that cybersecurity is kind of a legal adjacent, law adjacent space. But I'm curious, what pushed you in a VC startup direction?
So it's a bit of a long story, but I'll keep it short. I've always been...
You can keep it as long as you want, don't worry.
Perfect. Then let's go. I've always been drawn to the intersection of law and business, to be honest. And during my study, I got really interested into corporate law. So not purely the technical side, but more like the entrepreneurial dimension. So I thought that why not building something at some point, And my mom's an entrepreneur, so I always admire the flexibility that come with it, be your own boss, work the hours you want to work, and also the fact that not 2 days look the same. So I've kind of decided to pursue my study, my master in entrepreneurship at UCL in London. And at that point, I had genuinely no idea about what venture capital was. And also, after a couple of months, I realized that being a founder was maybe not the right thing for me as well. And that's because the level of risk and responsibility is immense. But what I did knew is that I wanted to be surrounded by brilliant people that will, that would make my day more interesting, and I knew that I wanted to support them in a way or another. So after several time, we got some finance classes, and that's where I discovered VC, and honestly, it just clicked for me. For me, venture capital is a way to discover new things every day, not just about products, but about different businesses, about different strategy, different go-to-market, and so on. And if you're like me and you don't like routine, well, I'm happy to tell you that's the perfect antidote to it.
I hate routine, Solenne, so it's very on point the way you described it. Very quickly, I want to ask this because obviously there's legal tech startups out there too, right? Like Legora, the Swedish one, for example. And I understand, I fully agree that being a founder is a huge, immense risk. But have you ever considered like maybe becoming an operator, joining an early stage startup, joining a fast growing scale up instead of pursuing a VC? What made you VC more appealing than, let's say, pure startup play?
As I said, I think it was the opportunity to explore diverse type of business. So one might say that my fund is specialized, so people might not understand what I'm saying behind that. But cybersecurity is such a broad landscape. So with that specialized fund, I have like some of barrier to put myself in and not go everywhere, as well as the opportunity to delve in the whole cyber ecosystem that is absolutely huge, and I'm more than happy to talk about that later, of course. So yeah, that's to keep like the seeing new things every day part of things that I've joined a VC. But I would say that maybe later I'll be very interested to join a startup and contribute to it myself at some point.
Yeah, it is very normal. You see a bunch of investors, they come across a startup they really find interesting and exciting, and they end up joining. And the way you described it is very interesting. Cybersecurity is similar to, let's say, climate tech or fintech. It's sure, it's like a segment, it's a space, but within it, there's like a million different kind of startups, things you can go after, which is a perfect segue to my next question. about cybersecurity. I don't know enough about cybersecurity, Solenne, so I'm relying on you to tell me about a bit more about it, educating me about it. It seems like, as you mentioned, it's a very broad space, So when you describe it to an operator, to founder, to investor, or just an outsider like myself, like how would you go about it? How would you define it? How would you segment it, and what the real opportunities are?
So at Auriga, we'd like to think about cybersecurity as trust tech. So literally the entire technology stack that will allow us to trust the digital world and to understand where the real opportunities are. We'd like to look at 4 major drivers shaping the market right now. So the first one I can mention is digitalization, of course, with the explosion of cloud, SaaS, as well as connected infrastructure. The second, of course, AI, which is both transforming existing security tools and creating as well a newly threat sector to attack. Third, I can think about regulation and compliance. They are more and more demanding because of the whole amount of new technology that are risen those days. And fourth, I would say the expansion of connected hardware, so Internet of Things, embedded system, autonomous machine that are creating a new vulnerability scape at a very, very massive scale.
And which one are you most personally excited about out of those 4 themes?
Oh, the AI one, of course. That's a hot topic,
Yeah, fair enough. When you look at, you are primarily, I'm assuming you're primarily focused on European cybersecurity startups, right? And I feel like cybersecurity has its own kind of focal points in the US, in Europe, whatever. How would you compare it to the American cybersecurity landscape? Where do you think Europe genuinely has an edge, and where do you think it's kind of lagging behind still?
Ugh, that's a tough question. I would say that in Europe we have a lot of strengths that don't get talked about enough. So we do have exceptional tech talent, we have world-class university, strong accelerator, government helping with grants. We have hubs like Station F in Paris, for example, that are literally nurturing a new generation of founder. And we have as well, of course, regulation, which I know can sound like a constraint, right? But I think it like create a genuine competitive advantage for European startup. We have a lot of framework like GOP, GDPR, NIS2, DORA that create a demand from homegrown solution and will give European buyers strong reason to favor local vendors actually. And in terms of where I would say Europe still struggle compared to the US, for example, I would say is the go-to-market. So if you take the US, it's essentially one unified market with a shared culture of early adoption. So what I mean by that is that, for example, they speak the same language, they share a culture, and so on. The Chief of Information and Security Officer there, the CISOs, they are used to taking bets on early stage company. Whereas in Europe, the market is more fragmented with different language, different culture, different risk appetite as well, and different procurement cycles. So that culture of early adoption is less ingrained. And I would say that for us, European, it makes scaling a little bit harder. But that's something that's actually a big part of what we try to do at Auriga. For example, we'd like to provide small capital that would help founder travel around that complexity.
What you mentioned about one of the things is the regulation part of it, right? And I think Europe obviously is known for its rules and regulations. And cybersecurity is an interesting space because regulations can actually create quite a few opportunities for cybersecurity startups, but also can kill them too, right? So I guess where do you see it creating friction, and where do you see it like actually creating very valid, good opportunities?
As you say, regulation often get framed as a burden on innovation, and you're right, it sometimes genuinely is. But in cybersecurity, I actually think that's one of the biggest tailwind we have. The framework I just mentioned, like NIS2 or the AI Act, are forcing companies across every sector to take security very seriously, and this is creating a huge addressable market for startups that help them literally to comply. And it's also bringing a barrier to entry effect. So once a regulatory standard is established, it becomes very difficult for a non-compliant foreign solution to enter the market, and that's a structural advantage for European player. So yeah, in a nutshell, in cyber, regulation is not just a headache; it's actually a market creation mechanism at the moment.
Are there any recent regulatory changes that you're seeing in the landscape that you're like, okay, this might actually be another market creating force?
Yeah, I mean the AI Act that got moved to 2027 now. We kept saying, because it was supposed to be released in 2026 now, so we kept seeing in the deal for a lot of startup, cybersecurity startup, basing their solution on it, how to comply, helping other company, whatever their object was, comply to that act. But it got a little bit moved, and I'm very excited to see whether it's gonna drown them or whether it's gonna give them more room to actually come with a solid solution.
Mm, that's very fair. I guess AI, we mentioned AI already a few times, so it's a natural progression to ask a question: how AI is transforming cybersecurity.
So I would say that it's genuinely transforming cybersecurity in two different ways. So first of all, it's making existing cybersecurity tools, really more powerful, with faster threat detection, better anomaly recognition, and more efficient response. But the second thing, and that is what I find more interesting, and I mentioned it already, is that it's creating an entirely new category to itself, securing the AI itself. So where I would see the most durable value is that as well AI is addressing the talent shortage. Cybersecurity is a deeply complex field, right? And there's simply not enough skilled professional to meet the demand. So AI is starting to close that gap by automating certain tasks that would require senior expertise before, like for example, alert triage in SOC, Security Operations Center. So that's where I see the another real opportunity. But where I'll be more cautious with AI is when people slap AI powered on a product without it actually changing the underlying value proposition, you know? So the question I always ask is, does the AI fundamentally change what this product can do, or is it just a feature?
One thing that's very obvious point to talk about is the AI agents, right? They're being
Mhm.
deployed in healthcare, they're being deployed in financial services, they're being deployed in literally even in defense industries, right? So and they're very highly sensitive environments with very kind of high risk, high impact kind of environments. And there's also a lot of agent to agent interaction happening now too,
They
which
are,
is
yeah.
like takes the human out of the loop too in a way. Um, I guess my question, to you is how do you think of agentic security, and what are some kind of important or exciting or I guess some overlooked opportunities in that space?
So I would say that agent they differ from basic LLM in a very critical way that you mentioned. They don't just generate tasks; they make decision and they take action, and that changes threat landscape entirely. So when you give the agent a permission to act on your behalf, you're opening a new attack surface. And of course, you need to ensure that that agent doesn't escalate its own privileges beyond what it was given. So you need to protect it from that. You need to protect it from being manipulated or corrupted by other agents, for example, as well as from prompt injection, from corrupted inputs, all those kind of things. And essentially, the question becomes, how do you trust something that's making autonomous decision? And that's very fair. And there's this cybersecurity conference called the RSA in San Francisco that was weeks ago, and someone from my team came back from there and said, "Yeah, actually, AI security was the dominant conversation there. People were debating with orchestration, access management, runtime security for agents." I'll say that this is still early, right? But it's moving very fast, and I think it's one of the most important emerging category in the space right now.
We are seeing the new updates with Claude. We're seeing new updates with OpenAI. Mesos, the Cloud Mesos recently. So I guess to counter that, to go to secure that, is it what does it depend on? Is it like guardrails that you have to develop around those developments? Is it you have to like do adjustments to the model itself? Like how do you think of those things?
But there's different way to do that. Depends what you want to secure. So you can have solution that will take care of securing the agent before it's actually running on any infrastructure. So post deployment, you have solution that will allow to secure. Pre-deployment, you would have as well solution allowing to secure it post deployment. So before it's deploying in anyone else's infrastructure, you'll have solution that will allow you to define policies and do a bit of management of your whole agent that you have, those kind of things to a bit oversee what's going on. There's obviously a remediation issue now that all of those 0 days vulnerability detected. It means 0 days means that we don't know how to fix them yet. So yeah, I think there's going to be a huge place for remediation startup as well.
I guess beyond the agentic security, what does it, cybersecurity seems maybe 1, 2, 3 you're seeing in a space that is really exciting to you?
Yeah. So one that for me is a bit obvious at the moment, but it's just my personal view. I would say that's software supply chain and code security. And that's with the AI coding tools, everyone's becoming a developer using Lovable, using Cloud Code, and so on. So code is being generated at a unprecedented pace, but not all of that code is secure, obviously. So the attack surface is expanding dramatically, and securing what ends up in production is going to be a massive challenge. So yeah, that's one of the sector I can think about now. The second one I would say is Internet of Things, so IoT, embedded security. We are surrounding ourselves with autonomous machine in car, medical devices, industrial equipment. If you look in San Francisco, for example, they do have a self-driving car there. And what is
way more, right?
Yeah, exactly. And what is it more than a computer on wheels? So securing that infrastructure is not optional in my opinion, and it's still deeply underserved because that's something emerging. And then last but not least, I would say data security in AI model. So everyone is using AI now. Everyone is training their model on sensitive data. Everyone wants to have proprietary models, so that makes sense. Or even just when you and me interact with an LLM through prompts, there are real confidentiality and integrity risk there. So we can see prompt injection, data leakage, model poisoning. There are still a lot of threat in the space, and this is still an open problem and a growing one, in my opinion.
Oh wow! This is actually, now that you say it, obviously a bunch of AI models are being trained on data, and that data can come from anywhere. And if there's certain poison in that data, it can definitely affect your models too. Like starting at the source is another opportunity. I never actually thought about it. It's so cool. When it comes to cybersecurity, I always wonder what I guess a great cybersecurity founder or profile is. It's when you look at typical software startup, you'll see any sort of backgrounds, the college dropout, or YC or what. Cybersecurity just seems like such a uniquely specialized place. Like I don't know. I would imagine it's not a typical 16-year-old that's building a cybersecurity startup, right? I guess not that you've been in space for some time and you're exposed to founders and startups. What are I guess in your view makes a good cybersecurity founder and compelling cybersecurity startup profile?
That's very funny that you mentioned 16 years old, because I actually saw two boys last time on a call. They were 17 and 18, ready to go. Yeah, two boys to join university on the bachelor, very prestigious university though. And they were brilliant. Like, I remember when I was
I take my words back. I apologize.
Yeah, I was not building some cybersecurity company when I was their age, and I was genuinely impressed with the maturity they showed. But honestly, no, we are seeing a bit of everything in terms of background. But what, in my opinion, makes a good cybersecurity startup is, first of all, the team, of course. So, in my opinion, in cyber, you need complementary profiles, a technical one, of course, someone who can deeply understand the threat landscape, and someone who can build a business around it. So I would say that as well, ideally, it's good if you have some great advisor that can bring some credibility and network, very important. And second, which might be a little bit more specific to cybersecurity, would be the trust and legitimacy. Cybersecurity is a word where it's a small word, is a tight-knit community. So I would say that the company that succeed early are most always the one that come with established credibility. People who've worked in the field, people who know who the buyers are, who have the relationship to land on their first design partner very quickly, and so on. So yeah, I would say that, and I would add that if people trust you in cybersecurity, the doors will open way faster.
I guess the reason I said you wouldn't see a typical 16-year-old in that environment is because, as you mentioned, it's very relationship based, very trust driven environment. And, how do you build those relationships, and how do you open those doors when you're so young? Like, what are the typical, I guess, ways of doing that? What do you see?
For young people, for young founders, they most of the time they are part of some accelerator. With uni or university, they almost all have accelerator. And obviously the teacher there, they are giving them, if the solution is good, you get interest from your teacher, and the teacher itself will have probably a lot of network and connection. So my advice is join this if you're a young founder on your university, or even if your university is not proposing those type of programs, there is a lot online, YC, those kind of things that you can join to get a little bit of access to reputation and network.
Yeah, fair enough. Solenne, we are coming towards the end of our episode, and I guess I'm going to tie it in a bit of a circle and go back to the beginning part of, you are obviously an investor in this space. It's a very unique, very interesting space. A lot of good opportunities. I mean, Wiz acquisition was completed not long ago for 32 billion by Google, I believe. It was a company invested by Index Ventures, Wiz. So it's a massive market, and it's going to become even more big. I feel like with AI. You're still at the very beginning of your investing career. I guess what I'm wondering is, what's actually hard about being, what have you found is actually hard about being a good cybersecurity investor, especially in a place that can be quite intimidating, sometimes jargon heavy, very, legal, very technical. So yeah.
So obviously that is applying to my background. I don't have an engineering background. So as you mentioned, the jargon is the first thing you have to fight through as a non-engineering background. And it's genuinely dense. But beyond that, I would say that the real challenge is to map the ecosystem. So who are the buyers? Who are the sellers? What does the sale motion actually look like? Who holds the budget and who feels the pain? My personal approach has been to develop enough depth in the area that interested me and try to challenge that with my network. So I've came to the conclusion that I don't need to be the most technical person in the room. In fact, having a non-engineering lens can be sometimes an asset, because I'm always asking myself, does this solve a real business problem, not just a technical one? So yeah. And more generally, the other thing I've learned is that you obviously need 3 layers simultaneously to be a good investor: the product, the market, and the founder. If you're missing one of them, I think that's how you end up in bad investments. But I don't know, we haven't made one yet in Auriga.
I guess my last question to you would be, if you revisit this conversation in 2 to 3 years, around the cybersecurity investing, what do you think? What kind of companies or segments or threats will matter most? Will be huge?
That's a very difficult question to answer. The market is growing so fast at the moment. We are seeing so many cool things developing every day. But I would start by talking about the investor. So I think we will see more specialized investor, fund that will focus specifically on cyber rather than generalist approaches, or cyber and AI, or cyber and data, anything. Because at the earlier stages, founders aren't just looking for funds, They are most of the time looking for a partner who can understand their market deeply and can open the correct doors. So I would say that specialization will matter more. Now, on the company side, I think consolidation is inevitable. Right now, enterprises are managing an overwhelming number of security tools, and they're going to push towards platform. So I think that we will see fewer bigger players with a solution that is covering everything. And the last thing I can say is it's very hard to build a credible cybersecurity company without AI being somehow at the center of the product, not as a feature, but really as a core architectural decision. So yeah, that's my final word on that question.
No, honestly, I feel like it tied it together perfectly, and you kind of summarized our entire conversation in a few points. So very much I appreciate it. Solenne, thank you so much for such a wonderful episode. It was lovely talking to you, and I hope to remain in touch.
Thank you very much for having me. Bye bye.